Thank you. Thank you for being here. You know, I've spent more than 50 years studying how economies work. I've watched empires rise and I've watched them fall. I've seen fortunes built in a single decade and wiped out in a single month. And through all of it, there's always been a pattern, a template, that repeats itself across 500 years of human history. But I'm not here today to talk about empires or ancient history. I'm here to talk about you, about your family, about what's going to happen to your savings, your retirement, and your purchasing power starting in just a few days. Because on January 1st, 2026, a mechanical process will begin that most Americans don't understand. A process that will quietly, steadily, invisibly transfer wealth out of your pocket and into someone else's. And by the time most people realize what's happening, it'll be too late to do anything about it. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. You're thinking, Ray, come on, you're being dramatic. I just heard I'm getting a raise, a 2.8% cost of living adjustment on my Social Security. The news said seniors are getting help. The politicians are talking about tax deductions. And yes, that's technically true. You will see a few extra dollars in your check come January. About $56 a month for the average retiree. But here's what nobody is telling you, and I mean nobody. Not the politicians, not the news anchors, not even most financial advisors. That raise is already gone. It was spent before you received it. It was eaten by the healthcare system, by inflation, by the silent machinery of currency debasement that's been running in the background for years. And by the end of 2026, you will be measurably, mathematically, undeniably poorer than you are today. Not because you made a mistake, not because you invested badly, but because the machine is working exactly as it's designed to work. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not here to scare you. Fear is a terrible investment strategy. I'm here to explain the mechanics. Because once you understand how this machine actually works, once you see the gears turning, you can protect yourself. You can position yourself on the right side of what's coming instead of being crushed by it. And there's one number, one simple ratio, that will tell you whether you're winning or losing in 2026. Most people will never know this number exists. They'll go through the whole year feeling like something's wrong, feeling like they're falling behind. But they won't be able to put their finger on exactly why. But by the end of this talk, you will know that number. And that knowledge, that simple piece of arithmetic, will separate you from the millions who will walk into this year completely blind. I'll reveal that number before we're done today, I promise. But first, I need to tell you a story about the last time I was completely, publicly, humiliatingly wrong. Because that failure taught me everything I know about how these cycles actually work. It was 1982. I was young, I was confident, maybe too confident, and I went on national television and made a prediction. I said we were heading into a depression. I had studied the data, run all the models, looked at the debt levels and the monetary policy. I was absolutely certain I was right. And I was completely, devastatingly wrong. The economy didn't collapse, it boomed. And I nearly lost everything. My business, my reputation, my career. I had to let everyone go. I was so broke I had to borrow $4,000 from my father just to pay the bills. That moment almost destroyed me. But it also taught me the most valuable lesson of my life. The economy is a machine. It operates on simple principles that repeat across centuries. And when I got it wrong in '82, it wasn't because the machine had changed. It was because I didn't understand the template well enough. So I spent the next 40 years building that template. I studied every major economic crisis in the last 500 years. The Dutch Empire when it collapsed under the weight of its debts. The British Empire when the pound lost its reserve currency status. The Weimar Republic when hyperinflation destroyed the middle class, the Great Depression of the 1930s, the stagflation of the 1970s, the 2008 financial crisis. And here's what I found, and this is the key to everything. Human nature doesn't change. The same patterns repeat over and over and over again because people always make the same mistakes. They always believe this time is different. They always think the good times will last forever. And they're always surprised when the cycle turns. The template works like this, and pay attention because this explains everything that's about to happen. When a nation accumulates too much debt, and I'm talking about the kind of debt we have now, $38.5 trillion and climbing, the government faces a choice. It can default on that debt, which is politically impossible. No elected official will ever vote to tell bondholders, sorry, we're not paying you back. Or it can devalue the currency, print more money, which makes the debt easier to pay off, but makes your money worth less. This is what I call the big debt cycle. And America is now in what I'd describe as stage 5, the stage where debt monetization accelerates, where inflation becomes sticky and persistent, and where the middle class gets squeezed the hardest. Why the middle class specifically? Because the wealthy hold assets that rise with inflation. Their real estate appreciates, their stocks go up, their gold increases in value. The poor have government programs that adjust, however inadequately, to rising costs. But the middle class? They hold cash. They have savings accounts earning 0.5%. They have fixed pensions. They have Social Security that doesn't keep pace. And all of that cash, all of those savings, they're melting like ice cubes in the sun. Let me give you a historical example that's almost perfectly parallel to what we're facing right now. In 1973, America faced sticky inflation just like today. The government promised it was transitory. Sound familiar? That's the exact word they used a few years ago. Transitory. It'll pass, don't worry about it. Social Security recipients got cost of living adjustments, just like today. Politicians went on television and said they were protecting seniors. People thought they were keeping pace with rising costs. But here's what actually happened. From 1972 to 1982, cumulative inflation was over 130%. The purchasing power of the average Social Security recipient collapsed. People who thought they were safe, who thought they were doing everything right, discovered they couldn't afford their own lives anymore. They had to sell their homes. They had to move in with their children. They watched everything they'd saved for decades evaporate. The same mechanics are in play right now. And January 1st, 2026 is when those mechanics accelerate. Let me show you the current debt dynamics, because this is where it gets really concerning. Right now, today, the United States government is paying over $1 trillion per year just in interest on the national debt. Let that sink in. $1 trillion, and that's just the interest. That's more than we spend on national defense. That's more than we spend on Medicare. $1 trillion that doesn't build a single road, doesn't fund a single school, doesn't help a single person. It just services the debt we've already accumulated. And here's the mechanical problem, the unavoidable mathematical reality. To pay that interest, the government has 3 options. Raise taxes, which requires political courage nobody has. Cut spending, which requires even more political courage. Or print more money, which requires nothing but a decision at the Federal Reserve. Given the political environment, which option do you think they'll choose? They'll print. They have to print. It's the only path that doesn't require bipartisan agreement, doesn't require politicians to make hard choices, doesn't require anyone to sacrifice anything except you and your purchasing power. And when they print, your dollars buy less. That's not a theory. That's not my opinion. That's just accounting. It's arithmetic. 1 + 1 = 2, and more dollars chasing the same goods equals higher prices and lower purchasing power. I said this publicly in July of last year. I told an audience that America's debt situation is like an economic heart attack waiting to happen. I said we're spending 40% more than we're taking in, and that the debt service payments are squeezing away buying power like plaque building up in arteries. You don't feel it day to day, but one day you wake up and realize the damage has been done. Some people thought I was exaggerating. I wasn't. Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Chase, called this debt problem the most predictable crisis in modern history. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said it demands an adult conversation among policymakers. But that conversation isn't happening, because acknowledging the problem means making hard choices, and nobody in Washington wants to make hard choices, especially not in an election cycle. So the can gets kicked down the road, the debt grows, the interest compounds, and you pay the price, not in one dramatic moment, but in 1,000 small ones. Now, I promise to show you the number that matters. We're getting close. But first, let me show you what's actually happening to your costs in 2026, because this is where the illusion breaks down completely. Let's do the math of your life in 2026. And I want you to pay very close attention, because this is where most people lose without ever understanding how. The raise you think you're getting. The average Social Security recipient will see a 2.8% cost of living adjustment starting January 1st. That translates to about $56 per month, taking the average check from $2,015 to $2,071. You might be celebrating. You might think, finally, I got a raise. I can breathe a little easier. But let's look at the other side of the ledger. Let's look at what's actually coming for your expenses. Medicare Part B premiums are jumping nearly 10%, from $185 to $202.90 per month. That's $17.90 more every single month, automatically deducted from your Social Security check before you even see it. So your $56 raise? It's now $38, and we're just getting started. The Medicare Part B deductible is rising over 10%, from $257 to $283. The Part A hospital deductible is up $60 to $1,736. If you need hospitalization in 2026, if you have any kind of medical emergency, you're paying significantly more out of pocket before insurance covers anything. And that's just Medicare. That's just the government program. For those of you on private health insurance, either through employers or the Affordable Care Act marketplace, the numbers are even worse. Employer health insurance costs are projected to rise between 6.5% and 9% in 2026. That's the highest increase since 2010. The fourth consecutive year of elevated increases. Employees are going to see their paycheck deductions for health coverage surge 6 to 7% on average. Some will see much more. For ACA marketplace enrollees, insurers are raising premiums by an average of 26%. And if the enhanced premium tax credits expire, which they're currently scheduled to do, subsidized enrollees could see their payments more than double. We're talking about a 114% increase on average. People who are paying $888 a year could suddenly be paying over $1,900. Now here's where most people stop thinking. They see the raise, they see some of the costs, and they assume it roughly balances out. Maybe I come out a little ahead, maybe a little behind, but it's basically a wash. It's not a wash. It's not even close. Because inflation isn't running at 2.8%. The inflation for the things seniors actually buy, healthcare, food, housing, utilities, insurance, that's running between 3 and 10% depending on the category. The Federal Reserve's own economists are forecasting sticky inflation for 2026. Multiple forecasters see core inflation remaining stubbornly above 3% for most of the year. Some see it staying elevated through the end of 27. So let's do the real math. The math nobody wants you to see. Your income increases 2.8%. Your healthcare costs increase 10%. General inflation runs 2.5 to 3%. Add in higher insurance premiums, higher deductibles, higher food costs. Your real purchasing power? Declining. Every single month. I want you to understand something. Every single month of 2026, you will be able to buy less than the month before. Not dramatically less, maybe 0.5% less, maybe 0.75% less. It doesn't feel like a crisis. It doesn't make headlines, but it compounds. 0.5% a month is 6% a year. Over 5 years, you've lost 1/4 of your purchasing power. Over 10 years, you've lost 40%. And you barely noticed it happening because it was so gradual, so quiet, so invisible. This is what economists call the money illusion. You see more dollars in your bank account, so you feel richer. The number is bigger than it was last year, but those dollars buy less. The nominal number goes up while the real value goes down. It's like playing a game where the scoreboard shows you winning, but the rules secretly changed and you're actually losing. You're celebrating touchdowns while the other team is scoring points in a way you don't understand. And here's the part that should make you angry. Here's the part that nobody wants to talk about. Every dollar of purchasing power you lose doesn't disappear. It doesn't evaporate into thin air. It goes somewhere. It transfers. Where does it go? It goes to healthcare corporations, whose profits rise with premiums. United Health, Cigna, Aetna. Their stock prices go up while your purchasing power goes down. That's not a coincidence. That's the transfer. It goes to asset holders whose stocks and real estate appreciate with inflation. The top 10% of Americans who own 90% of the stock market. Their portfolios are inflation protected. Your savings account is not. It goes to the government itself, which effectively taxes you through currency debasement without ever passing a bill. They never have to vote on the inflation tax. They never have to debate it. They just print money and your purchasing power quietly drains away. This is the wealth transfer I've been warning about for years, and in 2026, it accelerates. The mechanics are in place, the gears are turning, and unless you understand what's happening, you're going to be on the losing end of the largest wealth redistribution in a generation. Now, I said at the beginning there's one number that tells you whether you're winning or losing. I've made you wait long enough. Let me reveal it now. I call it your real income gap. Here's how you calculate it. Take your annual income increase for 2026. For most Social Security recipients, that's 2.8%. Some of you might have pensions that adjust by a different amount. Some of you might have investment income or part-time work. Whatever your total income increase is going to be, write that number down. Now calculate your weighted cost increase. Healthcare is probably 20 to 30% of your spending if you're a senior. General goods and services are another 50 to 60%. Housing, transportation, food, utilities, insurance. For healthcare, use 10% as your cost increase. That's conservative based on the data we're seeing. For everything else, use 3%, which is roughly where core inflation is running. Do the math. If 30% of your spending is going up 10%, that's 3% right there. If the other 70% is going up 3%, that's another 2.1%. Total weighted cost increase? Over 5%. Your income increase? 2.8%. Your real income gap? Negative 2.2%, minimum. That means you're losing over 2% of your purchasing power every year, guaranteed, just by existing, just by paying your bills, just by living your life. And for many of you, the number is worse. If you have significant healthcare needs, if you're on expensive medications, if you have a chronic condition that requires regular treatment, your healthcare costs might be going up 15 or 20%. Your real income gap could be negative 5% or more. At negative 5% per year, you lose 40% of your purchasing power in a decade. That's not an exaggeration. That's compound arithmetic. Now, let me explain why January 1st isn't just another day. It's a threshold, a tipping point. The moment when the confluence of forces I've been describing reaches critical mass. On January 1st, 2026, the United States crosses a threshold I've been warning about for years. Annual interest payments on the national debt officially exceed $1 trillion. We're paying more just to service our past borrowing than we spend on the entire defense budget. That $1 trillion doesn't build anything. It doesn't create jobs. It doesn't fund Medicare. It doesn't improve anyone's life. It just services the debt. And it has to be paid, which means either massive spending cuts that won't happen, massive tax increases that won't happen, or more money printing that will definitely happen. This is what makes 2026 different. It's not any single factor in isolation. It's the confluence, the convergence, multiple pressures hitting simultaneously. Interest payments crossing $1 trillion, forcing continued money printing to avoid default. Healthcare costs exploding at 10%, eating your income gains before you see them. Inflation remaining sticky above 3%. Eroding whatever purchasing power you have left. Tariffs adding another 1/4 to 3/4 of a point to inflation, according to economic forecasters. Cost of living adjustments that don't even come close to keeping pace with real-world costs. When these forces converge, they create what I call a stagflationary trap. Your expenses rise faster than your income, month after month, year after year, with no escape valve, with no relief in sight. The Federal Reserve is caught in an impossible position. They have two mandates: keep inflation low and keep unemployment low. Right now, inflation is sticky and won't come down to their 2% target. They should probably keep interest rates high to fight it. But the labor market is cooling. Job growth has slowed. Unemployment is creeping up. They should probably cut rates to stimulate the economy. They can't do both. So they're paralyzed. And in that paralysis, while they debate and deliberate and issue careful statements, the slow erosion of your purchasing power continues unabated. You might be thinking, but Ray, the economy is still growing. The stock market was up last year. Housing prices are stable. Surely this will work itself out. I've heard that before. I heard it in 1929. Right before the crash. I heard it in 1973, right before stagflation destroyed the middle class. I heard it in 2007, right before the financial system collapsed. This time is not different. Human nature doesn't change, and the pattern is always the same. Debt accumulates quietly over decades. Leaders promise it's manageable. Interest payments grow until they crowd out other spending. Currency gets devalued to service the debt. Middle-class purchasing power collapses because they hold the assets that don't keep pace. Wealth transfers to those who understood the cycle and positioned themselves correctly. We are in stage 5 right now. The printing has already begun. The debasement is already underway. The transfer is already happening. And the thing that makes this so insidious, the thing that catches people off guard, is that it doesn't feel like a crisis. This isn't 2008. There won't be a Lehman Brothers collapse. There won't be a stock market crash that dominates the news for months. There won't be a single moment when everyone realizes everything has changed. This will feel like normalcy. You'll pay your bills, you'll get your check, you'll go to the grocery store and notice things are a little more expensive, but not dramatically so. You'll make it through each month. But at the end of 2026, if you look honestly at your finances, you'll have less real purchasing power than you started with. And at the end of 2027, less still. And by the time you realize what's been happening, by the time the pattern becomes undeniable, the wealth transfer will be largely complete. The people who understood the machine will have positioned themselves correctly. They'll own the assets that appreciated. They'll have protected their purchasing power. They'll be buyers when others are forced to sell. And everyone else? They'll wonder what happened. They'll feel like something went wrong, but they won't be able to pinpoint exactly when or how. They'll blame politicians or corporations or bad luck. But the truth is, the machine worked exactly as designed. They just didn't understand how it worked. I don't want that to be you. I don't want you walking into this year blind. So let me tell you what I've learned from 50 years of studying these cycles. Let me tell you how to protect yourself when the system itself seems designed to work against you. The first principle is this: don't trust the raise. Any extra money you get from cost of living adjustments or tax deductions, don't spend it. Don't treat it like a bonus. Don't celebrate by buying something you've been putting off. That $56 a month? If you spend it, you're actually falling behind. Because your costs are rising faster than $56 can cover. That money isn't extra. It's not even enough to keep pace. It's just less inadequate than getting nothing. Think of it this way. The raise is not a gift. The raise is barely treading water. If you spend it as if it were extra, you're choosing to sink. Preserve that money. Invest it in something that will outpace inflation. Even if it's just Treasury inflation-protected securities, even if it's just adding to an emergency fund. Don't let it disappear into daily expenses that would have happened anyway. The second principle: hedge your healthcare. Healthcare is the single biggest threat to financial stability for seniors in 2026. Premiums are up 10%. Deductibles are up. Out-of-pocket maximums are up. One serious illness can wipe out years of careful saving. You need a dedicated liquidity buffer specifically for medical costs, not part of your general savings, not mixed in with your emergency fund. A separate account, earmarked for healthcare expenses, that you don't touch for anything else. How much should you have? At minimum, enough to cover your maximum out-of-pocket for the year. For most Medicare beneficiaries, that's over $9,000. Have that amount available in liquid form, accessible within days if you need it. If you don't have that cushion, building it should be your top financial priority. More important than vacations, more important than gifts, more important than anything that isn't absolutely essential. Because one medical crisis without that cushion can cascade into a financial disaster that takes years to recover from. The third principle: own real value. Cash is what I call trash in an inflationary environment. I know that sounds harsh. I know people feel safe when they see money in their checking account. But that feeling of safety is an illusion. Cash sitting in a savings account earning 0.5% is losing 2.5% to 3% of its value every year to inflation. Over a decade, you've lost a quarter of your purchasing power while feeling like you were being responsible. You need to move at least a portion of your assets into things that reprice with inflation, things that go up in value when the dollar goes down. Gold has historically preserved purchasing power across currency debasement cycles going back thousands of years. It's not an investment that generates returns. It's a store of value that maintains purchasing power when paper currency is being debased. Commodities, the actual physical things that the economy runs on, rise with the prices of real goods. When inflation hits, commodity prices typically rise with it. Real estate in stable areas appreciates with inflation. Your house might be your best inflation hedge, but only if you own it outright or have a fixed-rate mortgage. If you're renting, you're on the wrong side of the transfer. Treasury inflation-protected securities, or TIPS, are government bonds that adjust their principal value based on the consumer price index. They're designed specifically to protect against inflation. I'm not saying abandon cash entirely. Liquidity matters. You need accessible funds for emergencies. But don't let your entire financial life sit in instruments that are guaranteed to lose value in real terms. The fourth principle is what I call the holy grail of investing. Find 10 to 15 good, uncorrelated return streams. Don't put everything in one basket. Not all in stocks, not all in bonds, not all in real estate, not all in gold. Diversify across assets that behave differently in different environments. When you do this correctly, you can reduce your risk without reducing your expected return. That's not intuition, that's mathematics. It's how modern portfolio theory works. If one asset class is struggling, others might be thriving. If stocks are down, maybe bonds are up. If the dollar is weak, maybe gold is strong. The diversification smooths out the ride and protects you from any single catastrophic loss. The fifth and final principle: calculate your own real income gap. Don't take my word for what's happening to your finances. Don't trust the government's inflation numbers or the politicians' promises. Do the math yourself. List your expected income for 2026 from all sources: Social Security, pensions, investments, work. Calculate the percentage change from last year. Then list your major expense categories: healthcare, housing, food, transportation, insurance, utilities. Estimate what each one will cost in 2026 based on the increases you're already seeing and the projections that are being reported. Weight each category by how much of your total spending it represents. Compare your weighted cost increase to your income increase. The difference is your real income gap. If that number is negative, you're losing ground, and you need to either increase your income, decrease your expenses, or restructure your assets to generate returns that exceed inflation. This isn't complicated math. It's addition and subtraction and multiplication. But almost nobody does it. They just assume things will work out. They trust the system to take care of them. And they end up wondering why they feel like they're falling behind, even though they did everything right. I've always said that pain plus reflection equals progress. The best learning comes from the hard times, but only if you pay attention. Only if you honestly assess what went wrong and develop principles to guide you forward. The pain I experienced in 1982, being wrong publicly, nearly losing everything, that pain taught me to study the template more carefully, to understand that cycles repeat because human nature doesn't change, to respect the machine even when I think I know better. We're in a cycle right now: the debt cycle, the currency debasement cycle, the wealth transfer cycle. You can't stop it. No individual can stop a cycle that involves trillions of dollars and billions of people. But you can understand it. And if you understand it, you can position yourself on the right side of the transfer instead of the wrong side. The storm starts in days. The mechanics are already in motion. The gears are already turning. But if you prepare now, if you take action while there's still time, if you refuse to be lulled into complacency by nominal numbers that hide real losses, you can weather it. You can come out the other side with your purchasing power intact, maybe even enhanced. The people who ignore these warnings, who trust that things will work out, who don't understand the machine, they'll be the ones funding the transfer. Their lost purchasing power will become someone else's gain. Which side do you want to be on? I want to hear from you. Comment below and tell me, what's rising faster in your life right now, your income or your costs? What category is squeezing you the hardest? Is it healthcare? Is it housing? Is it groceries? Share your experience because we need to see the pattern together. When enough people start paying attention, when enough people understand what's happening, we can make better decisions collectively. Remember, Evolution is the only constant. The economy evolves. The markets evolve. The cycles continue whether we understand them or not. Your choice is whether to evolve with them or be left behind. Adapt, and you survive. Understand the machine, and you can prosper. Thank you.